Hey y'all, it's Billy Hell, and I'm here to tell a story, and I'm going to get right to the point about who this story is about. Cindy Williams, Mark Hamill, and Erik Estrada. I was debating on whether to do this today or not because Cindy passed away yesterday, which reminded me of this, and I was like, oh dang, there's another story. I don't think Cindy would mind, and R.I.P. Cindy Williams. But this is a fun little story about Cindy. And then I've got some side stories. I have a huge story about Erik Estrada. But it's such a story. It's not very long, but it is intense. And I never told anyone what actually happened on the set between Erik and I because I was afraid I would get fired. In fact, I never really told the story to anyone for years out of fear of repercussions. I didn't do anything wrong. But anyway, I guess you'll see when I do my Erik Estrada story. Who was a pretty nice guy. So back then, this was 1991 when this happened. So I'd been in town long enough to get some jobs under my belt. And I started working in transportation. I got a gig on a show called First and 10, which starred O.J. Simpson. And I literally, not kidding, this is a whole nother story, I dealt with O.J. almost every day. I think he was on set 3 days a week. And so I was the guy who greeted and said goodbye to O.J. With his Bentley when he showed up and left. So I had a lot of time with OJ, and I will tell that story as well. So there's two stories I need to record later. But through that, I then went home. I realized if I could drive a truck, had a license for driving trucks, I could make a lot more money. So I went home to Texas. My dad had an international truck dealership. I said, Dad, can I borrow a semi? Of course, Jim, here's the keys. I drive down to the driver's license place. An hour later, I come back. I have a CDL, commercial driver's license. I'm now a transportation guy in Hollywood, which the daily rate was good. And I believe the hours weren't too terrible either because you were driving. So there were more rules about that than PAs. And so I got a call on this gig, and it was a CBS, I think it was a CBS movie of the week, maybe NBC. I don't know. It was called Earth Angel. And all I knew is that I was going to be in charge of a Star Wagon. Now, we should probably go look at the Star Wagons, and I have a picture of one. So this is a Star Wagon. You might have seen this in movies. I remember I had not seen such a thing till I got to LA, but any set, if you see these wagons sitting out in your town, because I see them in Nashville with some of the TV shows that happen here, it means some real filming is going on when there's a Star Wagon on the set. And this is where the stars live. So if it's a month-long shoot or a week-long shoot or whatever, they are in these wagons. And you'll see this wagon has one door, and I guess it has two doors, right? And this wagon has two doors. My wagon had three doors, and it held three people. And so I get there. And so your first job is to get in there and just make sure everything's clean, make sure trash, just cleaning countertops, making sure the bed linen's good and all that stuff. It's a pretty posh gig as far as being on the set. And it reminds me of a story. Just a video note. I worked on a movie called Prehysteria about dinosaurs, and we'll talk about that later, but that would be a whole complete opposite of a posh gig. I literally had every night nightmares of the set that I worked in there. But anyway, we're back to this. So I get there, and I'm like, okay, who's in my Star Wagon? It's always a fun question. And once again, in this one wagon, I'm trying to find the lineup here. Mark Hamill was at the pulling side. In the middle was Cindy Williams, and on the end was Erik Estrada. And as a kid who grew up on television, I couldn't believe it. That all these three people were not only going to be in one trailer, but I was in charge of the trailer and would have to talk to them at some point. And I was like, this is awesome. And I was getting paid. It was LA in the summertime. It was, or maybe, I know it wasn't hot, so it was beautiful. So I'm in this neighborhood. This is like a 50s movie. I think it was a 50s, man, that's another story with Armand Desante where I did a medieval story movie, and then it was modern time. And the guy from, anyway, there's a second story there. I'll stop doing that. I won't keep diverging. But it's the 50s, and then I think it's modern times. And so I get there, I get set up, And the first thing that happens to me is I'm reading Jonathan Livingston Seagull. It's a Bach book. It's the kind of book when you go to LA, they're like, "Are you new to LA? Here, read this book. You got to read this, and then you got to read some other books." And so I was reading one of the books you're supposed to read when you get to LA, and I'm sitting there in the sun. The trailers are set up. The next thing you have to do is stay out of those people's way. If they're in the trailer, unless they need something, you leave them alone. You let them do their thing, whether it's sleeping or smoking or many other things happen in those trailers, let me tell you. And so I'm sitting there. I remember, this is important. Let's go ahead and take a look at what I look like back then. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So this was me. This is what I look like, and I say that because this was taken on a movie set about the same time that I did this movie. So, just to give you an idea, that's me back then. I have made my screen a little too small here. 1 second. There we go. So I'm sitting there, and a shadow falls over me, and I open my eyes, and standing right above me, just like this, where my hand is. It's Luke Skywalker, my friends. I can't even believe it, although I'd been around some famous people at this point, so I'd learned not to lose my mind or anything. And I have big thoughts on famous people. I really think famous people are just like us to a certain point. And then when they get like Madonna famous or just hyper level famous, they are not like us anymore. They can't be. They have handlers. People are saying yes to them about everything that they need. They have all the money they would ever want until they lose it all. But they aren't normal people after a certain point. So anyway, and so you have to be very careful around them. Famous people, really famous people. But I look up and there's Mark Hamill, and he says, "What are you reading?" And I tell him, and he says, "Oh, I've read that." And talks about why he liked it. Asks me what my name was. Tells me his name. Like, I haven't seen him on TV and movies and Star Wars and all those things. And so I'm hanging out now with Luke Skywalker. He was just Johnny nice, man, I got to say. Very nice guy. And he's gone. So for the rest of the time I was on the show, he was in and out. The only problem I had with him is that I would come in and they would always leave their cigarettes hanging off the end of the like Formica tops in there. And they would let their cigarettes burn all the way down and then leave burnt marks. And I was like, I'm going to get killed. But I don't think I had repercussions. So the next story is about, and let's go take a look. This is good. We'll share this here. So this is the cast. This is Mark, and I'm not sure that is. I'm very sorry. I'm sure that's a. Dang it! I did it again. That is an actress I'm sure everyone knows. And then there's Erik Estrada, who was off of Chips, so his fame was a little bit not as big as it once was, but he was still young, good looking, and he was on. I think I just said it. Chips is Punch. And in my hometown in Texas, my brother and I watched Chips religiously. We both had little dirt bike motorcycles, and we'd ride around our ranch in formation like the Chips guys. So meeting him was great. He wasn't unfriendly. He wasn't the friendliest guy. And then the secondary story that I'll tell later in a different video, things got intense. I'll leave some other stuff out about him. And then I think I have another picture here. Yeah. Oops. Dagnabbit. What's going on? There we go. This is Cindy Williams at the time. Super cute. I must have met this woman. I not met her, but been around her. I have no memory of it. But that's Cindy. American Graffiti. That's how she got famous. And then Happy Days. So, of course, I watched every episode of Happy Days there ever was. And I still will watch American Graffiti right now. If you were to say, Jim, it's playing, I would just stop and go upstairs and watch it. And so she was on. So let's tell that story. I've completely messed up my screen here, which I shouldn't be talking about. I hit the wrong button. So hopefully everything's working screen-wise. How did this work? Cindy shows up, and so I'm showing her around her Star Wagon, this and this, and if you need anything, let me know. I'll be right outside. I'm always here. And she was super sweet. Everything you would expect of the girl that you saw in Laverne and Shirley. And so I'm going to leave now because I know not to overstay. And she locked the door. And she looked at me and smiled. And she said, what if I just don't unlock the door and I keep you here? Well, I've been in LA for a while. There was a certain thing about LA, like, I'm getting a little too depth in here. Let me just say my reply. My reply was, that would be fine. And I'm not even kidding. That would have been fine. She could have just locked me up in there and kept me for the show. I'd have been just as happy doing that as running the Star Wagon. She let me out. Of course, nothing happened. And she was super sweet to me for the rest of the movie. And just a super nice lady. So when my wife said that she passed away yesterday, I was like, oh no. We got it. We all get our time. This is my theory. And we don't know how long it is. So you got to enjoy it and do it right and be positive and make sure other people are having a good time in their lives while you're at it. So it's a reminder when somebody like that leaves that you don't know when you're going to leave either. So my point here is this super sweet girl. And then Erik Estrada, I'm going to save. Are there any other? I don't think I have any other stories from this little movie. It was a lot of 50s cars, which I really love because I'm a car guy. And so the best cars were coming out for the show. And I worked on some period pieces. Oh, man. Fred Ward. It was... Anyway, I worked on 50s period pieces and I worked on 60 period pieces when I got in the art department. So hard, these movies, because your street has to be period perfect. So every car is period perfect. When you do interiors, they need to be 1950s period perfect. And that is, for me, it was an art direction nightmare because you had to do switch panels and lights and anyway, that's a whole nother story. But this was a period piece. And I had these people in my Star Wagon, and it was amazing. So we'll get out of here, and I will tell you that my Erik Estrada story is short but intense. And Erik Estrada does not know this story, even though he was a part of the story. So if he watches it, he'll find out what happened that night. I'm sorry for not getting to that point yet. All right, everyone. Once again, thanks for watching. And I've just remembered like 4 more stories. I'm going to go make notes now so I can get those out. I'm Billy Hill. Hit the buttons and all that stuff. You know, I don't have a ton of views or anything right now. I'm just kicking this off. So if we can do anything to make it better, that would be awesome. All right, bye.